The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, you'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
The East Lindsey series is sponsored by Gainsborough Cycles 01427 617 752. For all your cycling needs, this is your one-stop shop located at 20 Ropery Road, Gainsborough, or online at gainsboroughcycles.com. There's a link in the description. Gainsborough Cycles, ask for Trevor Halstead. Welcome back to East Lindsey again, people. Now today we've got not just one, not two, but three villages to have a look at, all within the same parish. Weirdly, only two of them are mentioned in the parish name. The third one isn't for some strange reason. I wonder why. We'll see if we can find out as we journey around the parish of Lusby with Winceby. Lusby with Winceby, Lutter's Farm with Vinder's Farm. Today on TVI we hit the parish of Lusby with Winceby, another tiny one on the Lincolnshire Wolds. This is a lovely little place and it consists of three villages. Two of them are literally in the parish's name. They are the beautiful little village of Lusby, which has a church, a chapel and a school, and the very historic Winceby, famous for its battlefield. The other village, which isn't included in the name, is Asgarby. That sits to the south of the other two and it's generally all about the parkland associated with the hall. In the middle of it all, there's an area called Snipe Dales, a very rare part of the Wolds in fact, because it showcases to visitors how they once used to look. In this episode, we'll get a look at three churchyards. Only one has an active church now, because the other two have been pulled down. Nonetheless, it's worth going to see all three to see what they used to look like. In Winceby, we'll get a look at a large farmhouse too, that's the rather unlikely base of an oil and gas company with worldwide interests. Winceby also features a garage, which may interest all you classic car enthusiasts. By far though, the most interesting bit of this episode comes in the form of that battlefield, where in 1643 Oliver Cromwell almost met a sticky end. There are tales aplenty about the Battle of Winceby, including one that claims Cromwell was spared by his would-be assailant because his horse had been shot from under him. The battle may only have been a short one at 30 minutes long, but Winceby's significance in the entire war is one that often gets forgotten. We'll dive into all the reasons why as we journey through this area. Let's go. Lusby with Winceby should, in my opinion, have a different name. After all, it's not just the villages of Lusby and Winceby you can find in this one. Asgarby makes it a trio, but I couldn't fit that onto this map. As you can see from this map in 1900, all three villages commanded their own parishes at that time, but now they're all one. Location-wise, Winceby is to the west, Lusby is to the east, and Asgarby is south of them both. In the north, you can see there's another area, Snipe Dales. That's a nature reserve and a country park. In terms of how this all looks now compared to this map, not a lot has changed really, although quite a few of the landmarks have altered a bit. So we'll look at each of the villages in turn. That's the easiest way to cover this one, I think. Let's get started with Winceby, made famous thanks to a battle. You can split Winceby up into two areas, the village itself and the Winceby battlefield. The battlefield is handily marked here. It took place in the fields west of the village. In the village you can see a church is marked. That's no longer there, but the churchyard still is. The grand mansion-like Winceby house is still there too, and we'll be sure to take a look at that. Let's start with the battlefield. The Battle of Winceby took place on the 11th of October 1643 during the English Civil War. The conflict saw the Royalists, under the command of Sir William Widdrington, be defeated by the parliamentarian cavalry of the Earl of Manchester. Winceby is seen as one of the lesser battles of the Civil War. It lasted a mere 30 minutes. It is notable though, because it was the first time that Oliver Cromwell and Sir Thomas Fairfax would fight together on a battlefield. Cromwell was nearly killed in the conflict. There were in total around 6,000 troops engaged in the square up here, which isn't a lot by Civil War standards. However, the significance of Winceby far outweighs its scale. For Parliament's Eastern Association Army from East Anglia, this was their first major campaign. In the battle, the Parliamentarians destroyed a combined force of Royalist cavalry and dragoons from both Lincolnshire and Newark. This was a key win for the Parliamentarians because during the summer of 1643, the Royalists had drawn up plans to win the war by marching on London. However, they couldn't do that unless they could defeat the Parliamentarian forces holding the key cities of Hull and Plymouth. Their loss in this battle therefore stopped the plans in their tracks. They were so severely handled here that their siege of Hull was given up the next day. The victory was so swift and complete that the Association infantry didn't even have time to engage the enemy. The outcome would be that most of Lincolnshire would fall to Parliament, and there was a halting of Royalist ascendancy in the region. During the battle, the Royalists initially enjoyed a bit of success, but the collapse of the Royalist left and centre meant that Widdrington was left with a choice: either retreat or face envelopment. Cromwell, who had rejoined the battle by that point on another horse, mounted a flanking attack, and that was enough to cause the Royalists to flee the field in confusion. For the remainder of the day, the Parliamentarians hunted down Royalist stragglers, not stopping until dusk. The Royalists lost about 300 men in this battle, whilst the Parliamentarians only lost 20. It was a comprehensive rout. So how did Cromwell almost meet his end here? Well, reports of the battle tell us that he had his horse shot from under him, apparently by Sir Ingram Hopton, who was himself killed in the subsequent fighting. Some accounts indicate Hopton acted like a true gentleman and opted not to kill Cromwell as he lay exposed and defenceless on the ground. It's said that after leading the Parliamentarian forces to victory at Winceby, Cromwell travelled to Horncastle to pay his respects to Hopton. Hopton is commemorated by a memorial canvas above the font in St Mary's Church at Horncastle. The canvas's inscription describes Cromwell as an arch-rebel. Note, by the way though, the canvas bears an incorrect date for the battle, October the 6th, 1643. The battlefield is quite high ground, a considerable elevation given we're in a generally flat county. Although the general location of the battlefield is certain, the exact place where the action was fought is still open to debate. Information boards about the battle have been installed in various places around Winceby. There's one here in a lay-by immediately northwest of the village, for example, on the B1195. This one overlooks the site of the battlefield. Now, when I was researching all of that for the Battle of Winceby, I found a few bits and bobs about a boulder, and I can't remember for the life of me what specific part that boulder plays in the story. I wonder if this is the boulder in question, because it's right next to the information board that you've just seen there as I've been talking about the Battle of Winceby. I wonder if that's it. Like I said, I can't remember what significance it plays, but I can't imagine there are any other boulders around here. This is Lincolnshire, it's not the Peak District. There's no rocky outcrops for a number of miles. It's all fields and farmland. So now we're going to drive through some of that field and farmland as we make for the first of the villages. We've talked about the Battle of Winceby, now it's time to see Winceby village itself. So here we are in Winceby village. Let's have a walk around. Our first task is to make our way through this field towards the site of the now lost church here in this village. Handily, this footpath will take you right to it. Winceby is a good example of a deserted medieval village. Although it was quite an important settlement in Domesday times, it gradually faded into relative obscurity as its population declined, a process that was probably augmented by the effects of the plague. You'll no doubt notice as we traverse this field that there are earthworks all around us. These are commonplace in the entire parish. Both Lusby and Asgarby are also full of them. So here's the site of St Margaret's Church, which is no more, having been demolished some time ago. There is but no trace of the church that once stood here. There are the remains, though, of a few scattered gravestones in the churchyard, which is open to the public still. The building that once stood with them was removed in 1964. It was a Victorian replacement for a much older building that stood here previously. Its predecessor was a small thatched church which had a combined nave and chancel. The new church was built in 1866, so it didn't quite last for a century. With no church now, it would be so easy to dismiss Winceby as a place of interest if the battlefield wasn't a thing here. There really is very little else to the place. Winceby's economy, like so many other villages in this county, is totally dominated by arable farming. Indeed, at the heart of the village is a single farmstead. It may not have a lot, but there are still two other things I want to highlight here. A little bit up and downhill, that footpath, and lots of stiles as well. I much prefer gates. I don't know why people have stiles, quite frankly. Gates, I think, are much more effective, but I don't make the rules. Now then, we've reached a track here, and on this track, if you head that way, you're heading back towards the main road. And if you do that, you pass a big house on the left. That is Winceby House. Let's talk a bit about this. This is Winceby House. It's a farmhouse, but what a place this is, right? Grade 2 listed and built in around 1860, it's made of yellow stock brick and some ashlar dressings. It's 3 stories tall, which is pretty mental for a farmhouse. These days, it's also the HQ of a business called Badley Ashton. They were established in 1982 as a high-quality geoscience consultancy. They provide specialist reservoir description and prediction advice to the oil and gas industry all over the world. They are a multinational company with offices in the UK, the USA, Oman and the UAE. They've recently opened an independent office in Abu Dhabi too. Now I bet you didn't expect to see something like this in a place like Winceby, did you? Badley Ashton has substantial experience in the UK and Norwegian sectors of the North Sea, the Caspian Sea, North and West Africa, the Middle East, Alaska, the Gulf of Mexico, Australia's northwestern shelf, and many other regions around the world. Heading back towards the car, we pass the other thing I wanted to show you, this garage called Bournes Motors. Formerly known as Bournes Garage or Bournes Tyres, this for a long time was the only garage in the area focusing on tyre fitting. It was also a WCF filling station. That branch of the business closed in around 2012, marking the end of fuel sales. Bournes Motors now focuses on the sale and repair of classic cars. I'm led to believe that at some point in the past, a resident of Winceby had a collection of classic Morris miners and ended up having his very own Battle of Winceby. It was him versus the local council about some sort of issue I couldn't nail down. I wonder, who won that one? Yeah, no denying, people, the views you saw from the hilltop in Hammeringham on Monday are just that little bit better here in Winceby. If you stand outside Bournes Motors and look over here, all you see is beautiful countryside, and I can still see Boston Stump in the distance, by the way. I'll be getting close to that as this week goes on. I'm going to get a little bit closer to it now, actually, because now we've dealt with Winceby, it's time to move on to the next village, Asgarby. Okay, so next we're off to Asgarby. This is the village which sits to the south of both Lusby and Winceby. Again, it was its own parish once, but why it's not included in the modern name, I know not. Anyway, Asgarby was centred around a hall, as you can see here. Most of it was parkland. Within that parkland was another church, this time dedicated to St Swithin. Let's cover the hall first. Not much is known about this property in actual fact. What is known for sure is that it was once occupied by John Richardson in 1842. That was according to White's Trade Directory. However, that gave no description of the hall. The building and its grounds cover an extensive 3,945 square feet. It's a very impressive detached 6-bedroom period hall perched on an elevated site. That gives it some spectacular, far-reaching views of the Wolds. Handsome and brick-built, part of this glorious house is believed to date back to the Georgian era. Nobody knows for sure, though, when exactly it was built, or if it sits on the site of an older property. Major features of it include a pair of bay windows on the front facade and a traditional configuration with elegantly proportioned rooms throughout. A few years ago, this was available through Mason's Chartered Surveyors to be restored to its former glory. So too the church, or at least the site of it. Dedicated to St Swithin, it was a single-cell church with a louved bellcote at the western end. It had a green stone base with red brick above that and a slate roof on top of it all. Date-wise, it was early 19th century, but it stood on some medieval walls. It was given a restoration in 1882, but by 1966 it was disused. 20 years later, most of it was demolished, leaving behind a small bit that's just been left abandoned ever since. Again though, in much the same way as in Winceby, you can access the churchyard. Not that there's a great deal of stuff to actually see within it. The site is reached by a footpath on both sides of the churchyard. Churchgoers here would have been able to look south from this to see Boston Stump in the distance once upon a few years ago. You still can, but you have to fight your way through the trees and undergrowth these days instead. So if you go past that lit gate, which looks like time forgot, doesn't it? You end up on this, here. You end up here. The footpath continues past the lit gate and through Asgarby Hall's parkland. And you end up overlooking this magnificent lake here. Now, we don't see very many lakes in the Lincolnshire Wolds, do we? But there's one here in Asgarby. Haven't got a clue where this footpath goes beyond this point, quite frankly. It sort of goes off into the trees that you can see behind me there. It probably runs away towards another village. We're not about to do that. We're about to turn around and head now for Lusby, because that's Asgarby pretty much covered. The last of the three villages to go and see is Lusby, but before we get to that, we have to take a look at this area. This is Snipe Dales between Winceby and Lusby. In 1900 it was a fairly open space with relatively few trees, a nice mix of woodland and farmland. Today though, it's both a nature reserve and a country park. Snipe Dales is a very unique area on the Wolds. It's one of the few remaining examples anywhere on them that show them as they once were. It has a rich history that dates back centuries. Its form took shape in the last ice age, when glacial forces carved its lush valleys and rolling hills. In the mid-20th century, efforts spearheaded by local conservationists and the Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust led to the establishment of Snipe Dales as a protected area, a scheme aimed at preserving its unique biodiversity and natural beauty. Their work helped rejuvenate native plant species and create habitats for an array of wildlife. Today, it consists of a raised heathland nature reserve in the west and a semi-natural, mostly coniferous woodland country park in the east. Its location within a steep-sided valley means it contains many small streams, sourced from springs. The water in Snipe Dales flows into a larger stream that becomes a tributary of the River Lim. In turn, that flows down to Great Steeping and then eventually ends up in the North Sea via Gibraltar Point. The Prime Meridian runs through Snipe Dales, and you can find a plaque here which marks its journey through the park. Size-wise, the park stretches to 210 acres, of which 90 is woodland, previously owned by the Forestry Commission. Today it's owned instead by Lincolnshire County Council, who jointly manage the site with the Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust. Access is by foot or wheelchair only, although there is a car park with visitor facilities. Dogs are allowed on a short lead in the country park, but they're not allowed in the nature reserve. Now, even though I've only been here for a few minutes, this is a pay and display car park. You have to pay £1 if you're in a car. And I do have £1. There you go, you see, exactly £1 right there. But this machine doesn't take 2p's and 1p's. So because of that, I can't obtain a ticket. So if the people who own the sort of land around here see this video, I'll leave you this £1 down there next to the machine. Hopefully it gets to the right people. So we have one area left, and it's the village of Lusby, the largest of the three in the parish. This is a simple little place really. Most of it is located on a single street. On that street in 1900 you could find St Peter's Church and a Methodist chapel. Those are still there. Complementing them close by there was a school. Let's see what these look like today. Let's have a look at Lusby's church. This is now the only church in the entire parish, given that Winceby's and Asgarby's have both been knocked down. Grade 1 listed and dedicated to St Peter, this is a typical East Lindsey church, built of greenstone. It dates from the 11th century, although it does have some 15th century additions. It was further altered in 1893 by Ewan Christian, which actually saw it be slightly reduced size-wise. The porch is the most recent addition, 20th century in date. Note that this one has a bellcote. It used to have a tower, but the bellcote does that job these days. Rather unusually, sheep are allowed to graze the churchyard here. Mind you, I bet they do a better job of keeping the grass tidy than the council do. And they're cheaper to maintain too. Features of this one include a late 11th or early 12th century grave marker incorporated into the wall above the keystone of one of two blocked doorways in the nave. Both doorways are Norman. This one also has some Anglo-Saxon bits in it too. It's a proper historical hodgepodge. There are 6 memorials in the church referring to past villagers. Of particular mention is the niche built into the south wall with a touching brass memorial inscription. It records Anthony Palfreyman's grief at the loss of his wife Catherine, who died in 1555. Palfreyman was a wool merchant. In 1716, the rector of Lusby was the brother of the former Dean of Windsor, Penistone Booth, who was born in Lusby himself. Both were part of the extensive Booth family, progenitors of Sir Felix Booth and the branch that would inherit the Dunham Massey estates via marriage in the 15th century. I don't know whether you noticed that on the gate when I walked into the churchyard. Please close the gate. Ponies in churchyard. Well, didn't see any, but who am I to disbelieve that sign? There could well be a pony in there, and I don't know. So you know what? We'll shut the gate. We'll do what it says. Right, let's continue through Lusby. Take a left turn out of the churchyard and head this way. Let's move on to the other religious building now via the modest collection of houses Lusby possesses. This village, even though it's still tiny, accounts for the majority of the population in Lusby with Winceby. This is where most of them all live. Methodism in Lusby can trace its origins back to 1799. In that year, a house was registered for worship, but it would take another 20 years for a chapel to be erected. One was finally built in 1819 on Main Street, and you're looking at it here. It was used by the Wesleyans. It would have been a fairly modest building at first, but it was enlarged in 1842. It lasted a long time because it didn't close fully until 1996. Despite that, the last regular service was held in August 1994. Just before it closed, it had a membership of just 4 worshippers. It stood unused and empty for a while, but now it appears to be a dwelling. And speaking of dwellings, here's another building that used to be something else that's now lived in. Lusby once had the local school, Lusby C of E. This was built as a national school to serve the village as well as Winceby and Asgarby at the same time. It closed in 1962, and ever since the 3 villages have been without any form of educational establishment. This has seen a lot of extensions since it was built, and it's now barely recognisable as an old school from the road. That's really all there is to Lusby, and so with that we're done with the parish of Lusby with Winceby. You cannot overlook places like these. They might be tiny dots on the map, but they have loads of hidden bits to them. The same goes for the next parish. Its name is a quite curious thing. Indeed, Douglas Adams once thought so. Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as The Village Idiot, and I'm out.